In 1978, on the very day Gu Xingbang and I returned to the city from the educated youth settlement, he passed away from a heart attack. After the first week memorial, my mother-in-law brought home a baby boy, claiming the child's moment of birth matched my late husband's moment of death to the very second. Looking at the child, I could see a distinct resemblance to my husband in his eyes and brows. I doted on Gu Yuchen immensely. To dedicate myself to raising him properly, I never married. But on the very day he graduated from university and was assigned to the state-owned steel rolling mill, he drove me to my death. On my deathbed, my husband, who should have been dead for over 20 years, appeared with Yen Yisan, who had been sent down to the countryside with us back then. Thank you for raising my son for me, and for using your family connections to make him a cadre. Muing, after you die, my son will give you a grand funeral. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back on the very day my husband and I received the notice to return to the city. Muing, hurry to the county hospital. Yen Yisan sent word, your husband is having a heart attack and is in emergency care there. Ed Chunhua hurried into the room, speaking to me with urgent concern. Seeing this familiar scene unfold before me, memories from my past life came flooding back, and a chilling calm settled over me. Auntie, what did you say? I stammered, reeling from the shock as if I hadn't heard her right, the broom clattering to the floor from my hand. I choked out, my voice thick with emotion. Xingbang is perfectly healthy. How could he possibly have had a heart attack? Oh, for goodness sake, stop asking questions. Yen Yisan sent someone back with the message. How would we know the details? Don't just stand there. Hurry up and get to the county hospital. My aunt stood by, urgently urging me on and practically pushing me out the door. I pretended to be at a loss, struggling to accept the situation, and hurriedly ran towards the village entrance. Auntie, could you please run over to my mother-in-law's house one more time, ask her to go to my place, get the bicycle, and then head to the hospital. After I got on the ox cart heading to the county town, it was as if I had just remembered I hadn't notified my mother-in-law yet. I turned and gave Aunt Chunhua the instruction. Got it, don't you worry. Mewing, the ox cart set off, swaying and creaking its way toward the county town. Yen Yisan had moved out of the village half a year ago. Word was she'd gotten involved with a man from the city, who pulled some strings to get her a job transfer to the county town. She wouldn't have to toil in the fields anymore, and the whole village was green with envy, but no one had ever seen this man of hers. Besides, as an educated youth sent down to the countryside, she'd never been particularly close with the villagers, so she left. And after a few days of gossip, the whole affair was forgotten. On this day in my past life, I received the notice to return to the city. My husband had gone to town to collect the mail for me and suffered a sudden heart attack, but when he was brought to the hospital, he was still in a state of suspended animation. With prompt treatment, he could have recovered. Yen Yisan happened to be at the post office and saw what happened. She sent word back to the village, urging me to rush to the hospital. In my panic and desperation, I rode that bicycle Gu Xingbang had tampered with. Halfway there, I crashed down the mountainside. If not for sheer luck, getting caught in a tree, I would have died on the spot. After lying unconscious for a day, I was found and rescued. When I woke up again in the hospital following my surgery, I saw my mother-in-law sitting by my bedside, clutching my husband's funeral urn. Given this second chance at life, let me help turn your feigned death into the real thing. Might as well not let the accident my past life arranged for me go to waste. Let my mother-in-law ride to the hospital. The sins of the son shall be borne by the mother. I rode a bullock cart, swaying and bumping along the road to the county hospital. As long as nothing went wrong on the journey, my husband would still be lying in his hospital bed by the time I arrived. The county hospital's diagnostic capabilities were limited. They simply couldn't detect his state of suspended animation. If I hadn't overheard their plan in my past life, I'd never have imagined Gu Xingbang could be so audacious. Entrusting his very life to Yen Yisan's hands showed an immense amount of trust in her. The main entrance of the county hospital, I composed myself and put on a look of urgent distress. I ran towards the nurse's station. Doctor, I'm looking for Gu Xingbang's room. He was just brought in for an emergency heart attack. Are you a family member of Gu Xingbang? I nodded urgently, looking at the nurse with hopeful anticipation. I'm very sorry, but the patient was deceased upon arrival. He's in room 404. If you're family, you can go up to see him one last time. After that, the body will need to be removed promptly. The nurse's words hit me like a thunderbolt. How could he be dead? My husband was in good health, even with a heart attack. If he got to the hospital in time, he shouldn't have died, ma'am. Your husband was already cold when he arrived at the hospital. We confirmed his passing multiple times before we stopped resuscitation. Please accept our condolences. God only knows how overjoyed I felt inside hearing the nurse's words, but my face had to wear an expression of utter disbelief and grief. I couldn't let the mask slip. Thank you, thank you. I'm so sorry for my outburst just now. I stared blankly for a moment, pretending to have been so overwhelmed by grief that I was only now coming back to my senses. The nurse had seen too many people like me, who couldn't immediately accept the death of a loved one, and she was unfazed by my attitude, shaking her head to indicate it was fine. If cremation is needed, can the hospital help make the arrangements? I managed to ask with difficulty, "Ma'am, are you willing to have your husband cremated?" The nurse asked, her face lighting up with surprise. I knew that cremation ceremonies were available now and were even supported by the state. It's just that most common folk are more accustomed to the custom of burial. Cremation is seen as a heinous act, a violation of the natural order. I wish I could grind the bones of all 4 of them to dust and scatter their ashes. Burning one is a start. My husband and I are both university students. We're about to return to the city for our studies. Cremation was something we had discussed before. As I spoke, the sorrow on my face deepened. "Ma'am, you're all well-educated people. It's really good that you're open to the idea of cremation. Actually, cremation is a fine practice. Reforms supported by the state are never wrong." The nurse comforted me while promoting the benefits of cremation, and promised to call someone for me right away. Within an hour at most, someone would come to the ward to take the body away for cremation. In the hospital ward, Gu Xingbang's body was already covered with a white sheet. Yan Yisan sat on a stool nearby, her face etched with profound anxiety. I suddenly pushed the hospital room door open, startling her so much her face went deathly pale. Muing, what are you doing here?" I ignored her. His face was wooden, etched with profound grief. As tears streamed silently down his cheeks, the silent weeping soon became unbearable, finally erupting into uncontrollable, wrenching sobs. "Muing, Xingbang, he had a heart attack. He's gone. I'm so sorry for your loss." Yan Yisan quickly masked her look of surprise, replacing it with a sorrowful expression as she moved to help me up. I sidestepped her just in time, throwing myself onto Gu Xingbang on the hospital bed. I clung to his chest, weeping inconsolably. Passers-by outside the room peered in curiously, making Yan Yisan, who stood at the foot of the bed, feel rather awkward. In my past life, Gu Xingbang had tampered with the family bicycle, delaying my arrival at the hospital. In collusion with Yan Yisan, he faked a fatal heart attack, fooling the doctors and me alike. His death was a complete sham. Then, the 2 of them hid right under my nose, living carefree for over 20 years. All while I raised the son they had together according to the standards of a privileged child. I even used my connections to secure him a minor leadership position. But what I reaped in return was the venom of a wolf in sheep's clothing. Not only did he take over all of my Mu family's connections, but he hounded me to my very death. Unfortunately, his death-faking scheme had a fatal flaw. Gu Xingbang's heart attack was artificially induced. Yan Yisan had once helped an elderly Chinese medicine practitioner who was highly skilled in acupuncture. She asked him to help stage a fake heart attack death for Gu Xingbang. As long as the needles were applied again within 12 hours, Gu Xingbang would be revived, safe and sound. She made a deal with the practitioner that after this, their debt to each other would be settled. In my past life, as I lay on my deathbed, they stood before me, gloating and boasting about their flawless plan. If it weren't for that, I'd have no idea how they managed to fake death and fool the doctors at the county hospital. Once I confirmed the man under the white sheet was stone cold with no warmth whatsoever, I felt at ease. Having gotten the answer I wanted, I stood up immediately, not wasting a single second, and distanced myself from that ill-omened corpse. The ward fell into silence. I had nothing to say to Yan Yisan and had no desire to engage with her. I kept my head down, lost in my own sorrow. Refusing to look at her, Yan Yisan was flustered and anxious. Her plans had been disrupted, and she was panicking. As long as I stayed in the hospital room, she had no chance to remove Gu Xingbang's body. The longer the delay after the needles were applied, the greater the damage to the person. My mother-in-law, who was supposed to be keeping me occupied in the village, still hadn't shown up, yet here I was at the hospital, where I shouldn't be. The awkward silence didn't last long before the crematorium staff arrived. "Thank you for your trouble, sirs. Please be thorough when collecting the remains afterwards." Thank you so much," I said, my voice choked with emotion. Yan Yisan, standing nearby, finally couldn't hold back and asked, "Muing, where are you taking Xingbang? Auntie hasn't even arrived yet." "Oh, she's getting worked up." It seems this whole scheme was a conspiracy between the 3 of them, at the very least. Most of the plan was discussed and agreed upon by all 3. Mother-in-law's injury this time is no accident at all. She had it coming. Xingbang is Auntie Lin's only son. How could you rob a mother of the chance to see her son one last time? I watched Yenisen's anxious face calmly. Go on, make a scene. The higher you jump, the more justification I'll have to put you in your place. The crematorium staff exchanged puzzled glances, unsure of the relationship between the two of us and the body on the bed. Just then, the nurse I had spoken to at the station entered the room. Oh, you're still here. Haven't the family finished saying their goodbyes? No, it's over. I don't want to linger and be overwhelmed by the memories. Please, take my husband away. I shot a glance at Yenisen, my face a mask of sorrow that was hard not to empathize with. The nurse was indeed reliable and quickly understood what I meant. His own wife is handling his affairs. What business is it of an outsider like you to meddle? Once the funeral directors realized I was the one in charge, they immediately knew who to take orders from and promptly began lifting Gu Xingbang into the body bag. Having been reborn, I will ensure Gu Xingbang meets a just and proper end. Yenisen could no longer sit still. My mother-in-law isn't here, and I am Gu Xingbang's lawful wife. Of course, I have the final say in his funeral arrangements. Mooing, you can't be this selfish. Have you even discussed this with Auntie Lin? Does she agree to have her own son cremated? She cried out frantically, shoving past the mortuary attendants to scream in my face. We promised to go to university together. We promised to start a family after graduation. My father had even paved the way for us. And then you just left, so suddenly, without any warning. My eyes were downcast, and I was enveloped in an aura of profound grief. Everyone present felt a deep sense of pity. Everyone, that is, except for Yenisen. We made a promise long ago, to be cremated together after death. Our ashes mingled as one, even as ghosts. We vowed never to be parted. How dare Yenisen try to speak for Gu Xingbang in front of me? She mistakes my good nature for weakness. I recounted, with sorrowful emotion, the vision my husband and I once shared, casting Yenisen in the light of a scheming woman, taking the moral high ground. She invoked my mother-in-law's authority, trying to force me into submission. Seeing that I remained unmoved and even began recounting those sweet memories with Gu Xingbang, Yenisen was absolutely furious, yet there was nothing she could do to me. In my past life, I was utterly deceived by those four. Now, if it's acting they want, it's not like I don't know how to play the game. I'll see this through to the end. I'm just dying to see what that old hag's reaction will be when she finds out her son has been reduced to ashes. I signaled for the staff to quickly remove that ill-omened corpse while pulling Yenisen aside. No, none of you can take Xingbang's body. Aunt Lin isn't here yet. Don't you dare move him. Put him down, all of you. Yenisen struggled and screamed, her cries so heart-wrenching you'd think it was her husband who had died. I'd had enough after she slapped me in her frantic struggle. Seeing the body was already prepared and about to be taken away, I slapped her right back. Smack, the raised hand came down hard. Who the hell are you to Gu Xingbang? You have no say in my family's affairs. Yenisen's face was twisted from the slap, and she remained dazed for a long time, seeing the situation spiral out of their control. With no way left to stop me, she squeezed her eyes shut and cried out in desperation. Brother Xingbang isn't dead, he's really not dead, please. Don't take him away. The nurse's face fell at those words. What on earth are you talking about? Gu Xingbang was already cold when he was brought in. There was no chance of resuscitation. The doctor only issued the death certificate after repeated examinations. If you can't even tell the living from the dead, the doctors at the county hospital should just quit. We'll all be in serious trouble. The nurse is even more worked up than I am right now. Pointing at Yenisen, she shouted angrily. What's your relationship with Gu Xingbang? His wife is right here. You think she doesn't want her own husband to live? Who asked you to make a scene? You're the one who brought Gu Xingbang to the hospital. Don't you know what condition he was in? The man was already cold. Don't you have any common sense? The nurse grew more and more agitated. I watched coldly as Yenisen tried to defend herself but couldn't muster a single coherent word. Xingbang is not dead, I swear. Please believe me. Just give me a little time, and I'll prove it to you. Yenisen pleaded with desperate, tearful conviction, physically blocking anyone from taking her husband's body away. The crematorium workers, holding the body, were caught in a dilemma and could only stand by, watching the scene unfold. I've grown thoroughly impatient with her repeated attempts to obstruct me. Where did you find my husband, who was around when he had the heart attack? How long was it from the onset to when he got to the hospital? Why was his body already cold by the time he arrived? You have to understand, a body turning cold means they've been dead for at least an hour. No one knows Gu Xingbang's death is a sham. That old Chinese medicine practitioner is truly remarkable. At the very least, this feat of pulling the wool over everyone's eyes is not something just anyone could pull off. I confronted her with a stern expression, and the nurse. Following my lead, eyed Yenison with suspicion. If she showed the slightest sign of anything off, I was sure the nurse would call the police immediately. Yenison was completely flustered by now. She had no explanation for these questions and could only shake her head helplessly, silently praying that Guxingbang's mother would hurry up and arrive. Yenison, don't forget you're a married woman. What exactly are you trying to achieve by being so overly concerned with my family? I sneered. How is it that I never knew my own husband was so close to you? Why are you more devastated by his death than I am? The moment I finished speaking, the color drained from her face. Upon hearing my accusation, everyone present understood the situation perfectly. They looked at Yenison with contempt, convinced the woman had lost her mind. She's just a mistress who had a child out of wedlock, with the man she depended on gone. Is it any wonder she's gone mad, with a face like thunder? I left the hospital room, settled the medical bill, and clutching the freshly issued death certificate, followed the nurse's directions to the crematorium. Watching the furnace roar to life with my own eyes filled me with an immense, savage satisfaction. After about an hour's wait, a crematorium attendant emerged, cradling a small urn. The paperwork, payment, and the rest of the process were over with quickly. I carefully wrapped the jar and carried it away. Guxingbang was from Tianjin village. During the 3-year famine, his father starved to death in the mountains so that his wife and children could survive. From then on, the Gu family was left as a widow and her orphaned son, and their life became very hard. The son was a frail scholar, unfit for heavy labor, and the old mother wasn't particularly industrious either. That they managed to raise the boy was due in no small part to the villagers' willingness to cut them some slack. Guxingbang was a smooth talker who had cultivated an excellent reputation for himself in the village. Now, he had also become the only villager to successfully get into university and was preparing to move to the city. I'm afraid I'll be the subject of a lot of gossip when I return to the village with his ashes. In this day and age, not many people were accepting of cremation, and my actions were sure to upset many of the elders. Thankfully, my college acceptance letter and the permit to return to the city had both come through. All I had to do was wait for my train ticket's departure time, and I could finally go home. After spending a night at the guest house, I boarded the ox cart back to the village early the next morning. On the journey, I sorrowfully recounted the news of Guxingbang's death. My fellow villagers on the cart expressed their sympathy and regret. Once back in the village, I went straight to my grandmother's house. Clutching the funeral urn, Mom, I burst into tears the moment I saw my mother-in-law. She was propped up in bed, her leg in a splint and her face bruised. Before I could say a word, a woman walked in from outside. It was none other than Yenison. My mother-in-law saw my ashen face. Where the hell have you been? You were gone all night. What on earth happened yesterday? Where's Xingbang? Why didn't he come back with you? I extended the jar and my hands forward. Xingbang is in here. I could clearly feel my mother-in-law's body stiffen. A flash of shock passed through her eyes before she hurriedly turned to look at Yenison. Yenison averted her gaze, not daring to speak. What on earth is going on? Mooing, you explain this to me right now. What's happened to my son? My mother-in-law, unable to believe it, shouted at me. Mom, Xingbang is gone. I brought his ashes home. Tears streamed down my face as I looked at my mother-in-law with red, swollen eyes. My heart aching with a suffocating grief. You're lying. How could my son be dead? He just went to the post office. There's no way he could be dead. My mother-in-law wailed hysterically, pounding her fists against the bed with all her might, as if trying to force me to take back my words. In my past life, she had cried just as heart-wrenchingly by my sickbed, yet not a single tear had fallen. But now, Yenison arrived even earlier than I did. She's probably already told her everything that happened at the hospital yesterday. Seeing that I hadn't come back all night, the two of them still clung to the faint hope that I hadn't gone through with the cremation. Now, as I return holding the urn and admit with my own words that Guxingbang has been reduced to ashes, she simply cannot accept it. My mother-in-law wailed, pounding her chest with her fist. My son, I'm useless. I didn't get to see you in time yesterday. How could you leave like this? My son, how could you bear to leave your mother behind? A crowd had gathered outside the courtyard. After I spread the word on my way here, everyone knew Guxingbang had died. They'd come to see if there was anything they could do to help. The old woman was wailing, her heart utterly broken. And everyone present shared in her profound grief. But as I wept, the sound in the room began to change. Mom, don't scare me. What's wrong? I hastily placed the urn on the square table and rushed to the bedside, trying to help my mother-in-law catch her breath. My mother-in-law has asthma. She's been well cared for these past few years, avoiding strain, and hadn't had an attack in a long time. Now, agitated and already in discomfort from breaking her leg yesterday. She had a full-blown attack. Auntie Lynn, calm down, please, don't get worked up. Yenneson was rather eager, rushing over and shoving me aside. Hearing the commotion from outside, the villagers immediately rushed into the house, but the scene inside was rather odd. I, the daughter-in-law, was pushed aside by an outsider and left standing there helplessly, not knowing what to do. A young educated woman who claimed to have married into the town over half a year ago was nervously sitting by the bed, trying to soothe my mother-in-law. They were acting far more intimate than I, the actual daughter-in-law, ever was. The village women had sharp eyes. They spotted Yenneson's odd behavior immediately and exchanged knowing looks of disdain. The village doctor arrived just in time and quickly helped to calm the mother-in-law down. The village chief and the old party secretary were still by her side, offering words of comfort and urging her to accept her grief. Elder sister, you're not in good health. No matter what happens, you must take care of yourself first. That's right, asthma is no joke. Overexertion and emotional distress are both bad for your health. The elderly woman, who had just suffered an attack, looked at Yenneson beside her and thought of her grandson still hidden in the town. Persuaded by the village chief and the local doctor, the old woman soon fell asleep. In my past life, I was blind and foolish. How could a widowed mother, having lost her only child in her old age, possibly move past her grief so easily, especially an elderly woman suffering from asthma? It was so obviously illogical, yet I harbored not a single doubt. I even comforted myself, thinking that the child who resembled my husband must have given my mother-in-law the will to live. This led me to treat that ungrateful wretch even better later on, as if he were my own flesh and blood. Remembering the cruelty those 4 people showed me in my past life, my eyes welled up with tears once more. The villagers thought I was grieving over my recently deceased husband. The aunties looked at me with pity. I watched Yenneson, her face a tear-streaked mess. That plain face didn't even possess a third of my beauty. What on earth did Gu Xingbang see in her? Well, his blindness is the only logical explanation. My mother-in-law was bedridden for 3 days after this episode. In the meantime, I had set up Gu Xingbang's funeral altar and, following village customs, was preparing for the burial rites. As expected, my decision to have Gu Xingbang cremated in the county town angered most of the village elders. They thought me heartless, denying my own husband peace even in death. Only a few village officials and the young people who had made it to high school understood my approach. They even said in private that I truly lived up to being a college graduate. My ideological awareness was high, and I was closely following national policy. I didn't take those words to heart. I was leaving anyway and wouldn't be coming back. Yenneson ran back from town to the village every day to care for her mother-in-law, and the auntie's gossip grew more and more frequent. Occasionally, I would run into an auntie while she was gossiping. I never offered an explanation, just looked at them with a pained expression, as if I had something to say but couldn't bring myself to speak, my whole being radiating sorrow, mewing. Don't take it to heart, we're just gossiping. Xingbang is a good boy, it's just that his mother has always been a bit, well, she's never had her head screwed on right. Exactly, it's probably that old busybody Lin Zhaodi sticking her nose in where it doesn't belong, and that Yenneson, she never looked like a decent sort from the start, always flaunting herself. Even back in the village she was always hanging around the men. Who knows how she landed that man in town? The auntie's chatter was getting more and more off track. Yenneson only managed to get to town because of the opportunity one passed up. Back then, a subordinate of my father's was on temporary assignment at the county lumber mill. Knowing I was a sent-down youth in Qianjin village, he pulled some strings to get me a temporary clerical position. The pay wasn't great, but at least it meant no more farm work and a much easier life. The pity is, Gu Xingbang and I were head over heels in love at the time, planning to get married and prepare for the college entrance exams, so I ended up not taking the job. They were only on secondment for 3 months. I had planned to get the old boss's daughter properly settled during that time, but I let my infatuation cloud my judgment and didn't listen to a word of advice. In the end, Gu Xingbang took advantage of my uncle's transfer back to the capital. Using my name, he took Yenneson to the lumber mill, spent some money, and managed to squeeze her in. So Yenneson's temporary job was secured using my connections and, on top of that, with my money. Thinking about this, I'm seething inside. Once Gu Xingbang is 6 feet under, it'll be those 2 women's turn to get what's coming to them. The day Gu Xingbang was laid to rest, as Yenneson held her mother-in-law, weeping with inconsolable grief, I couldn't help but think of my past self. In my past life, I was rushing to the hospital when I tumbled down a hillside. A herb gatherer found me and took me to the hospital. I didn't wake up until the 3rd day after Gu Xingbang's death. I wanted to see Gu Xingbang one last time, but my mother-in-law said through tears, "Ying, I've already lost my only son, I can't let anything happen to you too, you're my only family now." Having lost my own mother at a young age and been separated from my father for years, I had long considered my mother-in-law to be my real mother. Seeing that she didn't blame me for arriving too late to see my husband one last time, but instead showed me nothing but concern, I was instantly and utterly overwhelmed with emotion. From then on, I became even more devoted to her, practically granting her every wish. "My son, how could you leave your mother behind like this?" Wah, brother Xingbang, pushed aside. I wasn't angry in the slightest, I just stood there meekly, head bowed, watching my mother-in-law and the other woman wail. The villagers who saw this instinctively felt it was wrong, but since it wasn't their family's business, no one wanted to stick their neck out and interfere. I just noticed a new layer of concern and pity in everyone's eyes when they looked at me. That's exactly the effect I wanted, to ruin my mother-in-law and that homewrecker's reputations first. Only then would it make perfect sense for me to return to the city without them. Mewing, as Xingbang's wife, "You should offer incense first, the rest can follow in order of closeness to the family," said the village chief, pointedly ignoring Yan Yisan and putting her in her place. "Yanzi is my goddaughter and Xingbang's sworn sister. She goes first." My mother-in-law, who still blamed me for her son's death, seized the chance to defy the village chief outright. I feigned shock as I looked at my mother-in-law. "Mom, Xingbang has a sworn sister. How come I never knew about this?" My mother-in-law shot me a glare, her face dark with displeasure, and didn't answer my question. The villagers who were helping out were growing increasingly impatient with Lin Jiaodi. Everyone in the village knew Yan Yisan was the other woman. My mother-in-law's move essentially confirms the whole affair. I know she doesn't actually want to legitimize that other woman, she's just taking her anger out on me, blaming me for her son's death. With Yan Yisan's unexpected presence, the funeral ended rather abruptly and anticlimactically. Nobody wants to get tangled up in the Gu family's dirty laundry. With Gu Xingbang dead, there's no way to prove whether he was ever unfaithful to his wife while he was alive, but from today onward, the stain of infidelity will forever tarnish Gu Xingbang's reputation. I won't let him carry that label to his grave, not after all the years he spent building his good name. Returning home from the mountain, with the ceremony concluded, the remaining matters are for family alone to handle. Outsiders can offer no help. Still here, planning to move in with your husband at my mother-in-law's place, or perhaps you intend to bring your godmother to live at your in-law's house. Back at my mother-in-law's house, I fixed Yan Yisan with a cold stare and spoke. Yan Yisan was taken aback for a moment, then her expression shifted to one of wounded innocence. "Sis, you don't have to kick me out. I'll leave once Mom is feeling better. I won't overstay my welcome." I couldn't help but scoff. This girl really knew how to put on an act. "Suit yourself, stay or go, I don't care. A perfectly respectable city girl, and you insist on doing this lowly work. It just goes to show the old saying is true." Yan Yisan's face stiffened. She had almost forgotten, if it weren't for the reminder, that she too was a city girl, but sadly, her family had fallen from grace. Right at the start of this political campaign, they had backed the wrong side, and her entire family was wiped out. All that remained was her, the family traitor, who had managed to flee to the countryside to eke out a wretched existence by betraying her own kin. These things are no secret to me. We practically grew up in the same place, we just never played together as kids, so we're not exactly close. Also, don't get the address wrong, you're my mother-in-law's goddaughter, so you should call me sister-in-law. You're not my husband's concubine, so there's no need to call me sister. I looked at her with a faint, ambiguous smile, and didn't let her off the hook until she uncomfortably averted her gaze, after I thoroughly mocked and ridiculed her. Even someone as shameless as her couldn't bear to stay any longer and had to slink back to town in disgrace. My mother-in-law went straight to her room upon arriving home, so she didn't hear the conversation between Yan Yisan and me in the courtyard, but even if she had heard, it wouldn't have mattered. We were bound to have a falling out sooner or later. After the other woman left, I went into my mother-in-law's room. The old woman leaned weakly against the headboard. Her eyes shadowed with dark circles, her face pale and haggard. A wave of grim satisfaction washed over me, followed by a sharp pang of heartache as I recalled my father lying lifeless on his bed in my past life, exploiting my trust. My mother-in-law had been slowly poisoning both my father and me at home. After years of hardship on the farm, my father's health was utterly depleted. He passed away less than 2 years after I returned home. It wasn't until I was driven to a stroke by the very children I raised, left paralyzed in bed, that my mother-in-law would come by every so often to tell me about the wicked things they had done. Coupled with Gu Yuchen's betrayal, it was what ultimately killed me with rage. Mooing, what on earth are you doing? My mother-in-law barked at me when she saw me rummaging through her room. Nothing much, just taking back what's rightfully mine, I said with an air of indifference. I don't have anything of yours here, get out and go back to your own home. Has your mind really gone with age? Didn't Gu Xingbang already get my dowry into your hands long ago? My mother-in-law's gaze instinctively fell on a shabby trunk in the corner at the foot of her bed, a flicker of shock passing through her eyes. So that's where it was. If she hadn't glanced over, I'd never have found the place. Don't you dare touch my things, they're not yours, they're mine. That's my burial money from my son, you shameless hussy, how dare you try to steal from your mother-in-law? Seeing that I was completely ignoring her, the old woman opened the battered chest. She struggled to get up and come over, but despite her efforts, she couldn't manage to rise. As I began to take the items out, her anxiety grew, her breath coming in ragged, audible gasps. I unwrapped the small bundle swathed in satin. Inside were my bankbook, the ancient jade my mother left me, and some documents, including the deeds to several properties in the capital and bank deposit slips. All of it was a testament to my parents' love. From the moment I was born, they set aside money for me every year, hoping I would never have to worry about finances in the future. In my past life, after Gu Xingbang faked his death, he dealt me a final, underhanded blow. He had long since handed over the valuable deeds and bankbooks from my dowry to my mother-in-law. I was consumed by grief over my husband's death, and then with a new child to care for, my days became a whirlwind of constant busyness. After returning to the compound, I didn't pay any mind to those things. We weren't short on money or a place to live, so I focused my energy on raising my child and helping my mother-in-law adjust to life in the compound. I also had to make time to reconnect with my father and rebuild the bond we'd missed for years. So it never even crossed my mind to reclaim those land deeds and deposit slips. I let Gu Xingbang and Yenisen live in my courtyard for over 20 years, completely for free. I mocked myself, thinking that in my past life, I was a complete love-struck fool. There were so many red flags, yet I never suspected a thing. See, this is exactly my thing, I said with a smile, showing it to my mother-in-law. I successfully made them faint from anger. After confirming my mother-in-law was out of immediate danger, I went home to drop off my things before rushing to the village doctor's place to ask him to come and see her. It's better if she doesn't die so quickly. I haven't finished venting my anger yet. My mother-in-law's asthma attacks and fainting spells kept happening over and over, completely wrecking the health she had managed to rebuild over the past few years. This time when she passed out, the village doctor said there were signs of a stroke. Just as expected, when mother-in-law woke up again, one side of her body was completely paralyzed, and she had lost the ability to speak. This is truly karma. In my past life, I was driven to this exact state by rage, and then tormented by them one after another until I literally died of anger. Mother, it's time for your medicine, I said with a smile, helping her up and cheerfully attending to her as she drank, perhaps clinging to life. Mother-in-law was remarkably cooperative as I fed her the medicine. You know Gu Xingbang and Yenisen have a son, right? I said with absolute certainty. My mother-in-law's clouded eyes turned to me, flickering with a trace of guilt. You know Gu Xingbang and Yenisen planned to fake their deaths and run away together. She averted her gaze, unable to look at me. If the plan went smoothly, they should be in some courtyard in town right now, the three of them enjoying a happy family life. Once I've calmed down a bit, you'll bring my grandson back to the Mu family properly, where he belongs, and then you expect me to spend the Mu family's money and use our resources to raise your Gu family's grandson. I kept smiling at her, never pausing the motion of feeding her the medicine. It was only then that my mother-in-law finally began to feel afraid. Then, once your eldest grandson grows up, inherits everything from the Mu family, and finally kills me, your family of four can be reunited and achieve a class leap all at once. With every word I spoke, my mother-in-law grew colder, until by the time I finished, it was as if she had been plunged into an icy abyss. She could never have imagined that these events were my entire life. The smile on my face grew colder, and my eyes held a sharp, knife-like glint. In my past life, during my recovery, my mother-in-law cared for me with the utmost devotion. She even shed her former laziness and kept me company every single day. Spending all our time together like that truly helped ease the sorrow in everyone's hearts. Just as my bond with my mother-in-law was growing deeper, she came home one day with a newly weaned child who bore a striking resemblance to Gu Xingbang. My mother-in-law said, "This child must be Xingbang reincarnated, come back to make up for us." A lonely widow and her widowed daughter-in-law, I foolishly believed her lies and, for my mother-in-law's health, readily agreed to adopt the child. I raised him as my own, nurturing Gu Yuchen with the same upbringing I had seen for boys in the compound where I grew up. He excelled, and upon coming of age, he seamlessly took over all the Mu family's resources and assets without a fight. Then, he turned around and killed me, his adoptive mother. It wasn't until my death in my past life that I realized he had always known who his birth parents were. All those years by my side were just an act, a calculated display of filial piety and care, all for the sake of getting his hands on the Gu family's fortune. After turning 16, he would take a long trip every year, claiming he wanted to see the magnificent landscapes of our country and broaden his horizons while he had the time. I believe traveling 10,000 miles is better than reading 10,000 books, since our family could afford it. I never tried to stop him and always gave him plenty of money for his journeys, but in reality, he was just going to reunite with Gu Xingbang, Yan Yisan, and their child, his real family. In this life, I didn't get into a car accident, and Gu Xingbang is truly dead. If that family of 3 wants a reunion, they'll have to meet in the afterlife. Just as that family of 4 in my past life casually decided my fate, this time the roles are reversed, strangely. Even though I so easily decided Gu Xingbang's fate, I feel no guilt whatsoever. Perhaps the agony from my past life was too searing, leaving me numb and devoid of feeling. The grudges from my past life, stealing my husband, killing my father, and plotting to ruin my family, mean I can never let them off the hook. If they hadn't laid a hand on my father in our previous life, I wouldn't have been driven to wipe them all out. Mom, this isn't over yet. Think of your precious grandson. Don't you dare die so soon. As soon as these words were spoken, a sudden glimmer of hope flashed in my mother-in-law's eyes. I just don't get it. Is a grandson really that important? After dealing with my mother-in-law, I slipped away to town. An anonymous letter of complaint was delivered to the lumber mill. If Yan Yisan thinks she can use my connections to secure a comfortable life, she'll have to get my permission first. That job wasn't even obtained through proper channels. She's been using my name, burning through my connections, and throwing her weight around at the factory. The sheer audacity of it all. I'm certain the people at the lumber mill wouldn't dare to intercept this letter of complaint. My uncle is their direct superior. If this isn't handled carefully, the entire leadership team at the lumber mill could be purged. For the second letter, I went to the County Public Security Bureau. Gu Xingbang's death was suspicious. The hospital's death certificate clearly stated the circumstances of his arrival. Furthermore, if Yan Yisan can't explain the cause of his heart attack, she'll be in a real bind. Even if she's innocent, it'll look like she's guilty. Being taken in for questioning is a certainty. Whether she'll be charged or not depends entirely on the choice Yan Yisan makes. After finishing all that, I went to the train station to pick up my ticket. In 10 days, I'll be leaving this place behind and starting my new life. As for what happens to my mother-in-law and the other 2, that's no longer my concern. My 2 letters had a tremendous impact, first sending shockwaves through the upper management of the lumber mill. Who would have thought someone would have the audacity to impersonate the big boss's niece and work at the factory for over half a year? After extensive investigation and verification, it was finally confirmed that Gu Xingbang, the husband of the boss's actual niece, personally led the team that came to handle the matter. Digging deeper, they discovered the man was dead, and had only just died recently. When the investigation turned to Yan Yisan, they ran into the county police investigators. After comparing notes, both sides agreed, this woman was dangerous. So, without Yan Yisan or her mother-in-law knowing, all 3 of them were soon put under the microscope, with every detail of their lives scrutinized. The police found and arrested Yan Yisan at her mother-in-law's house. She's still putting on the act of the dutiful goddaughter, bathing her mother-in-law and giving her medicine. While there's no direct evidence yet to prove she was responsible for Gu Xingbang's death, the circumstances are certainly suspicious. To find out what really happened, the only way is to get Yan Yisan to talk. Please, I have children. Let me go back and make arrangements for them, won't you? As Yan Yisan was being taken away, she kept screaming frantically, completely panicked. I hid at the back of the crowd, watching it all unfold with cold detachment. Don't worry, we'll make sure your child with Gu Xingbang is delivered to Lin Jiadi, the child's grandmother. The policeman's words left everyone in the village stunned. So that woman really was Gu Xingbang's mistress. No wonder Lin Jiadi showed no respect to the proper wife. The mistress on the side had already given her a grandson. After that, the villagers looked at me with even more pity in their eyes. I pretended to be utterly devastated and returned home in a daze. With only 3 days left before my departure, I kept to myself, rarely seeing anyone. I didn't even go to see the child after he was sent to my mother-in-law's place. The villagers were very understanding, and no one blamed me for anything. With the village doctor's treatment, My mother-in-law's hemiplegia symptoms improved, she could walk with a cane. Though she still couldn't speak, now that her eldest grandson had returned to her side as she wished, she mustered her strength every day to care for him. The villagers looked down on the Gu family's actions. Apart from a few gawkers, hardly anyone came to visit my mother-in-law. Before leaving the village, I made a special trip to see my mother-in-law. Seeing you so happy puts my mind at ease. All the effort I put into reuniting you with your grandson was worth it. I said to her with a beaming smile, you'd better live a long life, it'll be quite a while before the child's mother makes it back. My mother-in-law was furious, her eyes wide with rage. She knew I was behind it all and wished she could kill me on the spot. Not only did I ruin her son's plans, but I also brought disgrace upon both her son and grandson. The boy's mother is headed for prison. It doesn't get much worse than this, don't worry. You and Yenison still have plenty of good times ahead of you. Seeing the old lady absolutely furious yet completely powerless against me was utterly satisfying. As for me, I'm going home to enjoy the good life today. In 2 months, I'll be a university student. With a powerful and wealthy family behind me, I can start a new life whenever I please. With that, I picked up the suitcase at my feet and strode forward with a light step, into the morning sun. Leaving the bleak and shadowy days of my past life behind me. Story 2, in my past life, my elder sister took a fancy to the imperial examination scholar I had saved. She stole the token of promise and forced our parents to let her marry him. For the sake of the family, I had no choice but to take my legitimate elder sister's place and marry the cruel and tyrannical ninth prince. After the wedding, who would have thought the scholar was a wasted talent? He neglected his studies for frivolous pursuits and failed the imperial examination, and so I became the beloved princess consort, the envy of the entire capital, basking in glory and honor. My sister, consumed by secret jealousy, resorted to a deadly scheme, tricking me into sharing a cup of poisoned wine. When I opened my eyes again, my sister was in a hurry to return the token to me. Little sister, it's your turn to enjoy the good life this time, I see. We'd both gone back to the very beginning, but my dear sister, I would give anything to escape the misery of this royal household. Sister, you were the one who saved him. I should never have come between you and your destined match. When my sister said this with a knowing smile, I realized in an instant that she, like me, had been reborn. My sister and I were daughters of a military family, of noble lineage, and our parents doted on us excessively, in my past life. On the way to Green Mountain Temple, I rescued a scholar named Su Yun who had fallen on hard times and secretly brought him back to our manor. A poem he recited while in his cups won my sister's heart. Being the free-spirited daughter of a military house, she snatched the scholar's jade pendant and claimed the credit for saving him. After their marriage, my pampered elder sister, though reduced to living in a shabby wooden hut in a back alley, led a merry life with Su Yun. Living off her generous dowry, the dowry was squandered in no time. The scholar lost his integrity, his mind filled with absurd fantasies as he drifted aimlessly through the days, sinking into a stupor and racking up massive gambling debts. Yet my sister believed the scholar was destined for greatness, capable of stunning the capital with a single display of talent. She kept pestering our family's estate for money, breaking our parents' hearts. When the scholar failed the imperial exams, our parents finally cut off all support. My elder sister fell into destitution, surviving on wild herbs each day, worn down by poverty until she was barely recognizable. As for me, my life was not as glamorous as it appeared. The ninth prince was a sadist. After our marriage, he subjected me to cruel torment every night, hidden from the eyes of the world. In public, I am the noble princess consort adorned in gold and silver. In private, I am a lowly servant in the royal mansion, treated worse than a slave. It wasn't until I accidentally stumbled upon the secret between the ninth prince and the emperor in the study that the truth dawned on me. I rushed back to the general's manor to discuss it with my parents. There, I found my elder sister kneeling at the manor gates, pleading for help. Unable to bear her pitiful state, I kindly helped her inside. Yet, she grew envious of the expensive silk I wore and the fact that every piece of my jewelry was an imperial gift. She went so far as to lace the wine with realgar, and to allay my suspicions, drank it with me. In her final moments, her eyes were filled with nothing but hatred for me. You deserve to die. You stole the position of princess consort that was rightfully mine. I will haunt you, even in the depths of hell. The poisoned wine seared through my stomach. She and I were plunged into darkness, consumed by excruciating pain. Even the words I never had the chance to tell my parents were buried with me in the grave. Looking at my sister's radiant, smiling face, I silently accepted the jade pendant. Sister, if we could start over, since you desire this position, I will not contend with you for it. However, the ninth prince, he deserves to die." Fearing my hesitation, my sister went behind my back. She directly sought out Su Yun to reveal that the savior was the second miss of the general's manor, and even summoned our parents. My younger sister has long been smitten with him, but being a young lady, she's too shy to speak up. That's why she's come to me, her elder sister, to plead her case to our parents. I sat there indifferently, watching my sister plead so earnestly. Anyone who didn't know the truth would think she had my best interests at heart. Mother frowned at the shabbily dressed scholar, then shot me a meaningful glance. It suddenly reminded me of my past life. Mother had acted the same way then. She looked as if she could see right through my sister, wondering what on earth was going on in that head of hers. My sister kept on and on about my infatuation with the scholar. Father was also deep in thought. I knew if I spoke up, he would surely agree to the marriage. He was always unconventional and open-minded. "What are your thoughts?" Father turned his gaze to me, his eyes full of inquiry. I remained silent, but the scholar, unexpectedly, was the first to grow impatient. He knelt before me and earnestly vowed that if I would marry him, ours would be a match made in heaven, a lifelong devotion that would be the envy of every maiden, to hold your hand and grow old together, in perfect harmony, my heart devoted to you alone. I never cared for such things anyway. Those flowery romantic tales from the storybooks are only fit to fool my sister. What wonderful fortune you have, little sister. This scholar is truly a rare and fine gentleman. My sister looked at me with feigned envy, but I didn't miss the mockery in her eyes. Since you admire him so much, why don't you keep him for yourself? I couldn't help but retort. She quickly tried to hide the panic in her eyes, shaking her head repeatedly. I'm destined to be a princess consort. How could a mere scholar ever be worthy of me? Realizing the impropriety of her words, she quickly tried to smooth things over. But given his remarkable talent and silver tongue, he's bound for great success. Why don't you accept him, sister? In the end, I agreed with a smile, looking at my sister, whose smile did not reach her eyes. I made an additional request to our parents. I am still young, with 2 years until I am of marriageable age. I wish for Su Yun to remain in the manor to tutor me in reading and writing until the wedding. Everyone in the general's manor was skilled with weapons, and my father excelled in military strategy. Yet they all looked down on scholarly pursuits. But from my past life, I knew there was profound wisdom in those arts. It was time to cultivate my own circle of advisors. My sister was astonished by my sudden fondness for such bookish things and suspected I had been reborn alongside her. But upon reflection, she reasoned that in my past life, I was so spoiled and favored, I would have never deigned to value such things, and so she set her mind at ease. The thought that she had loved this scholar so desperately in this life, even to the point of catering to his whims, filled her with a perverse satisfaction. Father, my sister's idea is sound. It will prevent the scholar from backing out before the wedding and shaming our general's manor. She was determined to bind me irrevocably to Su Yun, forcing this version of me to kneel and witness the true, overwhelming majesty of imperial grace. My parents didn't care for this arrangement either, but they finally relented after my insistent and repeated pleas. So, Su Yun moved into my little courtyard. With my elder sister's wedding still over a year away, she would often wander over to my place, praising Su Yun's remarkable literary talent. The ninth prince had yet to make a move. Recalling how the prince in her past life had praised my delicate, graceful demeanor, my sister hired several senior maids to train me rigorously day after day. You've ended up looking like a proper bookworm, dear sister. It must have been quite the effort, going to such lengths for Su Yun. She was graceful and elegant, as willowy and supple as a tender branch swaying in the breeze. Her lips were painted with a vibrant rouge, and between her brows was the pear blossom mark. The most fashionable style in the capital. I couldn't help but worry how long she could survive in the royal manor with that attitude, yet my sister reveled in it, eventually spending her entire days holed up in the side chamber, never coming out. Su Yun hadn't expected that I was genuinely willing to learn. I practiced calligraphy until my hand cramped, read until my voice grew hoarse, wishing I could devour every last bit of literary brilliance I had never before encountered in my life. I greedily snatched away the several books Su Yun had managed to salvage from his dilapidated, weed-choked cottage. That was when I finally understood the true meaning of books hold houses of gold. In the years that followed, I hired several tutors, amassed a collection of books that surpassed even Su Yun's, and wrote more essays than he ever did. I saw my sister again at a poetry gathering. I disguised myself as a servant boy and followed closely behind Su Yun. The literary gathering was filled with scholars and poets. After a few rounds of mutual flattery with Su Yun, I became acquainted with them. This young man is quite handsome. Is he your servant, brother Su? Su-yun gave me an awkward glance, his eyes betraying his confusion about why I had insisted on coming. This is my younger brother. He shows some promise. I suspect Su-yun was being mindful of my status, which is why she refrained from uttering the word manservant, but it matters little. I came to this literary gathering precisely to observe the capital's talented scholars and select a few of the most promising to recruit for my own purposes. As I took my seat beside him, a gauze curtain was drawn aside, revealing a noble young lady seated opposite who looked strikingly familiar, and there, seated in the place of honor, was none other than my elder sister. Gone was her former worldly poise and brisk elegance. Now, she sat demurely upon a cushion. A round fan held coyly to half conceal her face. A low murmur of whispers arose around her. How can the eldest Miss Jiang be so utterly captivating? A single glance from her is simply overwhelming. She used to always glare at me with cold disdain, but now she's grown all the more charming. Those crude, suggestive remarks made me uncomfortable. I glanced at Su-yun, whose expression remained unchanged, and I just felt a knot of frustration tighten in my chest. A low murmur of discussion echoed in the corridor. My sister lifted her chin, basking more and more comfortably in the praise. Her eyes were shining brightly. I knew she was intoxicated, drunk on the flattery. I was utterly captivated. In my past life, when I first entered the royal mansion, I was also lifted to such great heights, only to be cast down into the mire. The host of the poetry gathering announced the theme for this round, the Flying Flowers drinking game. Having studied for the better part of a year, I could keep up with the crowd for several rounds. Gradually, I too became enthralled, getting more and more into the spirit of the contest as the talented scholars went back and forth, each refusing to yield, like a whirlwind of clashing blades. Only today did I truly understand the fierce exhilaration of life and death struggle. You look so young, my friend. I never would have guessed you possessed such profound knowledge. Caught off guard by the sudden call, I nodded with a smile, offering a humble acknowledgement. In the final rounds, even Su-yun, who was beside me, was bested. I, however, got lucky. All the poems I'd memorized in the past happened to be relevant to the exam topics. I only conceded defeat after I'd exhausted everything I'd learned. Young Master Su is truly a prodigy. I am humbled, my dear brother. You are indeed a talent not to be underestimated, although I suffered a crushing defeat. I still managed to secure the honorable second place. The scholar who won first place was hiding behind the screen. Everyone knew perfectly well that he was the true mastermind behind the poetry gathering. Jiangji, spending all your time with Scholar Su. I had no idea you'd developed a taste for cross-dressing. My elder sister spoke up suddenly, her tone dripping with scorn and derision. The eyes of the entire room were fixed on my face, and for a moment, a profound silence fell. I had a feeling my sister would recognize me. Jiang Yu glared at me with resentment. At first, she only thought I looked vaguely familiar. Coincidentally, that penniless scholar Su-yun was also there, forcing her to keep staring at me intently. The longer she looked, the more certain she became of her suspicion. My elder sister gave an awkward laugh and continued, my sincerest apologies for today. My little sister here is quite mischievous and has spoiled everyone's fun. Pretending to be flustered, she helped me up as if to make a quick exit. The next instant, she yanked on my outer robe and threw herself backwards with force. The loose robe was torn open, revealing my slender, well-proportioned figure. Anyone who saw would have known immediately that I was a woman. Ah Ji, how could you do this to me? My sister demanded, her beautiful eyes brimming with hot tears. She had mastered the scheming ways of the inner chambers to perfection. Remembering how the concubines in the prince's mansion had slandered me in my past life with this same demeanor, I felt nothing but disgust. Even Su-yun shot me a look of disbelief, as if he never expected me to be capable of such a thing. He, along with a group of talented scholars, helped my sister to her feet. I gazed coldly at the faces of the crowd before me. Second young miss. Your sister only has your best interests at heart. How can a young lady be seen in public like this? I looked at the speaker and asked, I merely came to participate in the poetry gathering and happened to place second. How does that constitute being seen in public? As if stung, their faces all flushed with indignation. These people were already resentful at being outranked by someone younger, and now, to see it was actually a woman. Why must the second young lady put on such an act? As the saying goes, a woman's lack of virtue is her talent. To show no respect for your elder sister and to gain fame through fraud and deceit is truly contemptible. I sneered inwardly, watching these scholars whose faces had turned. My elder sister said with a gentle, forgiving expression, let's not speak of this further. My sister only strayed down this path because of her admiration for Scholar Su. The way everyone looked at me changed. their eyes suddenly held a touch of pity, and they sighed, shaking their heads, "Brother Sue. You are truly blessed to have such a virtuous wife and confidant. I can't help but envy you, indeed, for the second young miss to defy convention so brazenly for your sake. It makes for a truly romantic tale." A flicker of doubt crossed my mind. Could these people truly serve as advisors to my general's manor? Their talents were undoubtedly exceptional, but if they knew they were entering the general's manor to become my advisors, they'd likely want to dash their heads against a wall. "Are you suggesting a woman cannot possess talent and learning?" I asked, looking at the assembled crowd. "Little sister, what book of sages have you been reading that's addled your mind?" Jiang Yu thought to herself with a quiet laugh. "Indeed, second young miss, since ancient times, women should uphold the 3 bonds and 5 constants, with clear distinctions between inner and outer spheres. As a woman, you should regard Scholar Su as your master." I looked at Su Yun, the man who had watched me learn step by step for the better part of a year. "Is that what you think too?" Su Yun's eyes flickered, and after a long silence, he spoke. "I know you did all this for my sake, second young miss." With a single sentence, he effortlessly dismissed my late-night studies and my clumsy, painstaking efforts to master the classics, having spent most of my life as the daughter of a general's household. Stopping a thief in the street earned me a reputation for being domineering, and now, winning the poetry contest has branded me with a name for lacking virtue. My hand paused, and I drew a gold ingot from my purse, placing it on the table. This was originally a retainer for my advisors, but such a gesture of good faith is no longer necessary. The crowd was utterly perplexed, and my elder sister looked at me with a face full of confusion. "If you can compose a poem that satisfies me today, this gold is yours." Seeing the scholars growing restless, I added another ingot of gold. With a heavy thud, I slammed it onto the table, smiling as I looked at these learned men. "Little sister, how could you humiliate our guests like this?" Jiang Yu frowned, wearing an air of haughty superiority. I laugh at her pitiful foolishness. Having been a scholar's wife once before, how can she still fail to see through these people's true faces at this point? They claim to be above worldly concerns like money, yet they whine and complain, hurling insults with every word, simply because they lost to a woman. What kind of talented scholar is a man like that? I watched as one among them took the lead, and then the rest each returned to their places to pick up their brushes and begin writing. Jiang Yu, her pride wounded, glared at me with gritted teeth. "Jiang Ji, are you deliberately trying to humiliate me?" she muttered resentfully as she stepped closer. I could hear the sheer frustration in her voice. "Sister, as you said, I'm just a bookworm. How could I possibly harbor such elaborate schemes?" I watched the scholars scratching their heads in frustration with leisurely amusement, then casually produced another gold ingot for myself. Their eyes lit up with greed, and they began pacing about like anxious monkeys. All traces of their initial composure and elegance gone. I found it hilarious and couldn't help but let out a snort of laughter. Jiang Yu grew furious, unwilling to concede. She leaned in close to my ear and hissed, "Jiang Ji, just you wait. Once I become the 9th prince's consort, I will settle this score with you." With that, she tossed her words over her shoulder and hurried away, hips swaying. After a long wait, stack upon stack of love poems were placed before me. I savored the praise and flattery, each line and every word extolling my beauty as if I were a goddess descended from heaven. Su Yun stood by, hesitating as if to speak, but I paid him no mind and continued leafing through the pages below. A poem caught my eye, one that praised my talent, truly a standout among the rest. Holding the verse, I asked languidly, "Which gifted scholar penned this inquiry of the plum blossom?" "It was I." A low voice came from behind the screen. The company was jolted awake. They had nearly forgotten the presence of the Academy's patron. From behind the screen emerged a man in brocade robes, a long sword hanging at his waist. His heroic and dashing bearing was truly striking. I caught a glimpse of the dragon-patterned jade pendant at his waist. It was clearly a royal artifact at first glance. Then, I took a closer look at the man's face before me. I hurriedly straightened my posture. Wasn't this the elusive 7th prince from my past life? The reason a single glance at the palace banquet left such a deep impression was because the 9th prince had often warned that this man was not to be underestimated, a real wolf in sheep's clothing. The web of power behind the scenes was intricate and complex. During his years at the royal residence, the 9th prince suffered several covert setbacks. Because of this, I was tortured to the point of unconsciousness on multiple occasions. Xiao Bujue was also sizing up the second young miss of the general's manor. Despite her servant's attire, her delicate features were unmistakable. With her rosy lips and pearly teeth, she stood out like a breath of fresh air among the young ladies of the capital. opportunity knocks but once. I do have some reservations about the royal family, but I've read that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. My plans to recruit advisors were thwarted by these scholars, but with a powerful backer. Perhaps the general's manor could still be preserved. I recalled that night when the ninth prince and the emperor plotted to eradicate the general's manor, and I was filled with utter despair. Your poem, esteemed scholar, resonates deeply with me. Please accept these 3 gold ingots. If you do not find me unworthy, I would be honored to call you a friend. Su-yun reacted to my words with disbelief and urgency. Second young miss. How can you be so reckless and frivolous? Casually associating with men, if you're angry that I didn't speak up for you, there's no need to go this far. Looking at Su-yun, I felt nothing but disgust for his arrogance. Meeting Xiao Bujua's amused gaze, I knew I had to do something to prove my sincerity. Su-yun, tomorrow I will tell father that our engagement is off. You should leave. Su-yun's eyes widened, and he grabbed my wrist. You, second young miss. Our match was arranged by our parents and a matchmaker. How can you cast me aside for the sake of this man? I frowned and shook him off. What nonsense is this? Just because I saved you, you think you're some kind of treasure. Su-yun looked at me as if seeing me for the first time, his voice trembling slightly as he asked, but you told your sister you were fond of me, that you would marry no one else. I looked at him with amusement and countered, and when did I ever say I liked you? Su-yun was stunned, thinking back carefully. Jiangji had indeed never said such a thing. He had initially felt humiliated by the arranged marriage, but the thought of her supposed affection for him had secretly pleased him. You taught me for a year, consider that repayment for saving my life. From now on, we owe each other nothing. Climbing the social ladder while putting on such a holier-than-thou act, it's even more despicable than those so-called talented scholars. I looked at him with impatience, then turned to Xiao Bujue and said, let's find somewhere else to talk. Xiao Bujue gave a slight nod in agreement. I fell into step beside him, not pausing to listen to Su-yun's voice calling after us. The karmic entanglement between him and me, across past lives and this present one, I have let it all go now. A grand bridal sedan chair carried by 8 bearers, a procession of red dowry stretching for miles. I watched as my parents helped my sister, adorned in exquisite bridal makeup, into the sedan chair. Then turned and went back into the house. Xiao Bujue was standing in my small courtyard. Your Highness, you certainly do take the road less traveled. I looked at him with a touch of helplessness. Ever since I privately revealed my identity to him at the book gathering and we became friends, he's been dropping by the general's manor with surprising frequency, and he always does it so furtively, skulking around like a thief. I sometimes wonder if this man was a stray cat in a past life. The roads less traveled by ordinary folk are where you find the best views. He made himself at home, picking up the book from my desk, then lounged in the chair and started scribbling notes and underlining passages. Aren't you afraid of getting lost? I muttered a complaint under my breath, snatched the book back from him, and felt my eyebrow twitch at the sight of the pages now covered in indecipherable scrawl. Xiao Bujue, you really have too much time on your hands. I ran my fingers over the annotations I had finally completed, the fruit of several long, sleepless nights. The teacher would be reviewing them tomorrow. Having no time for his shameless expression, I hastily took out my small brush and began making corrections. For land travel, use a cart. For water travel, use a boat. For muddy terrain, use a sledge. For mountainous paths, use mountain shoes. And for traversing mountains, fell trees to clear a way. The voice of Xiao Bujue came through my hand. Holding the brush, paused. Xiao Bujue's lips curved into a smirk as he leaned in. Isn't this more precise and straightforward? Gripping my brush, I finally lost my patience and pushed his head away. Your Highness, have some decency. His answer was indeed every word a gem, and it hit the nail right on the head. Xiao Bujue simply changed his seat, settling directly in front of me, propping his chin in his hand as he stared, feeling inexplicably guilty under the scrutiny of those probing eyes. I had no choice but to close my book and meet his gaze. Your Highness, what exactly are you trying to do? His attitude towards me these days has been akin to keeping a pet songbird. He was always watching me, tolerating my audacity, yet harboring an inscrutable interest in me. I had no patience left to play this waiting game with him. With my sister marrying into the prince's manor today, time was running out for me. I decided to cast all caution aside. There was no point in this mutual probing any longer. Xiao Bujue also sensed my seriousness. His smile faded, and a chill crept into his tone. The second young lady spends all day studying governance and court affairs. Could it be you harbor some treasonous thoughts? He actually thinks I would plot to usurp my own father's position. I gave him an amused look. Have you lost your mind? My father is a military commander. Why would I be here comparing scholarly knowledge with him instead of campaigning across the land? Xiao Bujue rubbed his nose. This was the part he couldn't figure out either. Then what do you expect me to think, the daughter of a military general, studying all this? Unless you plan to disguise yourself as a man and sit for the imperial examinations. I rested my chin in my hand, pondering. That path didn't seem entirely impossible. Xiao Bujue seemed to read my thoughts and said with resignation, deceiving the emperor is a crime punishable by the extermination of one's entire clan. I abandoned the idea instantly. Your Highness, do you recall the promise we made at the academy that day? Xiao Bujue thought for a moment, then nodded. You claimed you could persuade General Jiang to join my cause. In return, I was to ensure the Jiang family's safety after our success and grant you one request. I nodded. He had recounted it word for word. I deliberately stressed the importance of this agreement, fearing he might forget. The day I have planned is fast approaching, and I must secure his promise. From my reading, I know that a verbal oath is as good as a lie. I retrieved the prepared covenant from the secret compartment in the study. It was written out clearly, with that particular matter specially noted. A decree was issued, granting women the same right as men to take the imperial examinations and serve as court officials. Xiao Bujue fell into a rare silence, his face stern as he clutched the paper. When he wasn't smiling, I found him strangely intimidating. The ninth prince's brutality was overt. But Xiao Bujue was like a bottomless abyss. He'd pull you down with a smile, quietly and without a sound. The second young miss is truly ambitious, yet unexpectedly selfless. No, I'm merely selfish. I cannot bear the thought of myself becoming a lonely, resentful woman confined to the inner chambers for life. Nor can I stand to see my fellow women bowing and scraping. Her fingernails dug into her palm, sending a faint, stinging pain. I am a general's daughter, since childhood. I've heard tales of vast deserts and yellow sands, the lonely cries of wild geese, and stories of blood spilled on the battlefield. My constitution is too weak for the front lines, but through study, I've learned that the strategies to decide victories 1,000 miles away and mastermind grand campaigns can also be realized on paper. I have never looked at anyone with such fervent, pleading eyes before. Xiao Bujue, do not disappoint me. So, Your Highness, what is your decision? I watched him nervously. What if he refused? What if he, too, looked down on a woman, dismissing this as a foolish fantasy? What would I do then? Perhaps disguising myself as a man is an option, or perhaps I could hide for a few years and serve as an advisor to someone else. The old saying goes, as long as the green hills remain, there'll be no shortage of firewood. I absolutely cannot give up here, I promise you. Xiao Bujue spoke too quickly, and pressed his seal too hastily. For the first time, I felt my eyes welling up with tears. It was finally done. As long as the next phase of the plan goes smoothly, as long as father believes I was right. Xiao Bujue looked at me with a complicated expression, then took out a handkerchief and offered it to me. Here, dry your eyes, he said softly. Only then did I realize hot tears were streaming down my face. I hastily took it and covered my face. Xiao Bujue sighed. He gently pried my hand away, took back the handkerchief, and wiped my tears for me himself. Jiangji, I find you more and more inscrutable. He tucked the handkerchief away into his robes. If you wish to escape the confines of the inner chambers, you don't have to make a pact with the devil. Following him is far too dangerous. Since ancient times, no struggle for the imperial throne has ever concluded without bloodshed and beheadings. He and I even spoke of overthrowing the throne as if it were casual conversation, yet I had no choice but to risk it all. My sister dreamed of her life of luxury, while our parents remained blindly loyal to that murderous old man. So, Your Highness admits to being a tiger, one who operates in the shadows with lethal intent. I teased playfully. Xiao couldn't help but laugh, grabbing me by the scruff of my neck. I see you've been slacking off reading those silly novels. You can't even string a decent sentence together anymore. I called off the engagement. But my sister had long since lost any interest in minding my affairs. She is now the much sought-after princess consort of the ninth prince, basking in boundless glory and prestige. On the day of her homecoming visit, when her sedan chair arrived at the general's manor, everyone knelt on the ground to welcome her arrival. Supported by her maid, her languid form moved forward, the opulence of her headdress dazzling the onlookers. Rise, she said. Yet she walked over and planted her foot firmly on the back of my hand. I silently withdrew my hand, a searing pain shooting through it, which I concealed beneath my sleeve without a word. Such pain was nothing to me. My elder sister looked at me with a smug, disdainful smile. The gap between us is now as vast as that between the clouds and the mud, she said. How pitiful that you still have to bow to me. I remained silent. Just wait. Sister, your laughter will soon be silenced. We were flesh and blood, sisters, yet she ended me, she ended the entire general's matter, with a single cup of poisoned wine. Now, she can reap what she has sown. Once the traditional home-visiting day passed, Jiang Yu's nightmare began right on schedule. A month later, I arrived at the prince's mansion under the pretense of visiting family. The moment I stepped through the main gate, I felt piercing stares. That familiar sensation washed over me, and my legs went weak, gritting my teeth. I made my way to Jiang Yu's courtyard. She was sitting on a stone bench, listlessly cradling a teacup. I saw the wild joy and desperate plea in her eyes as clear as day, but in the next instant, she hurriedly lowered her head. I took out the osmanthus cakes my mother had made and dismissed the maidservants around her. With the watchful eyes gone, she grabbed my hand in a panic and said, "Ah Ji, save me, the ninth prince is a monster, he beats me every night, I want to go home." I replied with a smile, "Sister, you're talking nonsense. You look perfectly fine, the prince dotes on you more than anything." Taking her hand in mine, I stroked it with an envious look and said, "Sister, your skin is so fair and delicate, you truly are blessed with good fortune." Jiang Yu's tears fell, smudging her makeup. Gone was her former haughtiness. Her eyes held a trace of madness as she kept repeating her pleas. A cold bitterness filled my heart. "Sister, if I forgive you now, who will save me from my past life? If I had not been reborn, who would be the one kneeling at the general's manor begging for money in this lifetime?" The maid returned and skillfully ushered me out, explaining that the princess consort, now with child, was prone to unpredictable moods. I nodded in agreement, glanced at Jiang Yu, and turned back toward the general's residence. "Father, there's something I'd like to discuss with you." That night, the lamp in the general's study burned until dawn. "If you do as I say, Father, you have nothing to lose. Whether it's true or false, you'll know once you try." In the end, Father agreed. After all these years at court, with the constant suspicion between ruler and subject, and the endless stream of accusations both fair and foul, he had never been willing to doubt that sovereign. For over 2 months now, Xiao Bujue still dropped by to see me from time to time. He urged me to quickly reach an agreement with the general, while also offering guidance on my studies. I benefited immensely. Sometimes a thought would strike me: if all the women in the world could attend school, what would the trivial matters of the household even amount to? In the winter month, a banquet was held in the palace. I huddled in my outer robe, nestled in the wool, as I was especially fearful of the cold in this life due to my past one. Amidst the clinking of goblets and the toasting of cups, I knew this banquet was merely another occasion for the old emperor to select concubines. That old man's lustful heart refuses to die. "You're dressed so beautifully today, even I feel a stirring of worldly desire." The moment I stepped out for a breath of fresh air, Xiao Bujue followed me out like a shadow. He shoved a hand warmer into my hands. I pulled off its cover and replaced it with my own. "Do you dislike me?" For the first time ever, I thought I heard a hint of hurt in Xiao Bujue's voice. "Ridiculous. Your Highness is always bickering with me. Aren't you afraid of biting your own tongue?" I tucked the warming pan deeper into my bosom, careful not to let myself get cold. Xiao Bujue replied with a smile, "The second young miss will shine brilliantly tonight. I fear I won't be able to stop myself from asking the old man for her hand in marriage. Be careful. This is a deadly business." I couldn't help but remind him that this night was of the utmost importance to me. "My primary objective with the second young miss is courtship," he said with his usual flippant air, his true intentions inscrutable. "Usurping the throne is merely a secondary concern." I turned and went back to the banquet. All the young ladies were to take the stage to perform. Following my father's gaze, I looked toward my sister. She sat bolt upright, but I knew the pain from the saltwater whip on her back must have been excruciating. That night in the study, I told father I had accidentally overheard the prince's conspiracy with the emperor. The emperor was indeed at the manor that day. That's why I was able to see my sister so easily. "Father, I'm going." With that, I stood in the center of the room, clutching my hand warmer. I declared loudly to the emperor that I had no talent for music, chess, calligraphy, or painting, but was deeply devoted to reading and writing. I expressed my wish to serve as a minor female official. This was a promise the emperor had personally made to my father years ago, pledging to grant any future request in recognition of his military achievements. Under normal circumstances, a minor official post for me to dabble in would be of little consequence, but if the sovereign harbored other intentions, his agreement was far from certain. Just as I expected, the emperor tried to placate me by dismissing it as mere girlish antics. Seeing that I remained stubbornly unyielding, he then proceeded to test my knowledge of poetry and literature right in front of everyone. The questions ranged from minor literary allusions to major affairs of state. I spoke with eloquence and erudition, citing classic texts. For 2 years I had prepared, studying diligently and striving with all my might to earn a reputation for myself, to reclaim the position that is rightfully mine. In the end, the emperor found a roundabout way to refuse. Those around me flattered my talents, saying I was suited for a good marriage, and then the 9th prince stepped forward to ask for my hand. Yet the emperor said his inner court was lacking a noble consort like me. What was once a supreme imperial favor, with the prince and the emperor vying for me, has now become a terrifying calamity. I turned to look at my father, his eyes filled with lingering fear. It was as if his soul had been drained in an instant, leaving him rooted to the spot in a daze. I hadn't expected Xiao Bujue to step forward as well. The banquet concluded with my exceptional talent and beauty captivating the capital, leading to a fierce rivalry between two princes and the emperor for my favor. Back at the manor, Xiao Bujue entered through the main gate this time, though he wasn't here for me. Everyone thinks I'm so fortunate that the 7th prince wore out his welcome courting me. In truth, he was only here to scheme with my father about their grand future. After going through all that, it's impossible to say I wasn't disappointed. The capital only gossips about how I bewitched the prince, never mentioning how I held my own at the banquet. A sudden wave of profound boredom washed over me, and an idea sprang to mind. I asked my parents for money and, after a complete makeover, quietly opened a new academy. This time, however, I did not disguise myself as a man. A private school opened in the outskirts, accepting both boys and girls, with an ordinary woman as the teacher. The children often call me Miss Teacher. Then, Suyin arrived, still carrying that air of aloof superiority. A colleague mentioned a lady teaching here, and I thought it might be you, second young miss. This time, his words weren't so grating. Second young miss. In the past, I, Su, was narrow-minded and failed to recognize your genuine passion for knowledge and learning. His apology, I thought, was fairly sincere. Now I see that the second young miss is truly erudite, diligent, and studious. I, too, am a lover of learning. I hope that in the future, we may continue to pursue knowledge without end, just as we did before. I let out a derisive snort. Suyin stared at me blankly, unable to fathom why I was laughing. When cornered, one reveals their true nature, I said, laying bare his intentions. Desperation breeds treachery, and wickedness emboldens the heart. I was no longer that naive second young miss. I hadn't learned all those things for nothing. Suyun's face flushed crimson with embarrassment, and she stormed off, feigning indignation and humiliation. I found it rather amusing and sent word to the private school's gatekeeper, instructing him to remember that face and to never let her in again. I paid to hire a new tutor and returned to the general's manor, following my father's orders. I set about doing what I did best. I began frequenting poetry gatherings, immersing myself in all manner of literary composition. Even at lantern festivals, I would solve riddles and match verses, essentially taking part in every activity befitting a scholar. A trend of women encouraging each other to study swept through the capital, with second Miss Zhang's literary talent inspiring many to emulate her. Many women took up their books, and the bolder ones even followed second Miss Zhang's lead, engaging in scholarly debates with men wherever they went. The livelier the capital, the colder the imperial palace. The emperor summoned the 9th prince for an audience and flew into a towering rage. Jiangyu suffered another brutal beating, and the child that never was lost. Outside, it was only said that the 9th princess consort was utterly heartbroken, her mind completely unhinged. Hearing this news, I knew the time was about right. After spending so much time with Xiao Bujue, I can't help but feel father has picked up a hint of his cunning. Like now, when he asks me how I knew it was time to act, I turn to look at the shadow outside the window, speechless. Father, you dare to suspect your own daughter, and could you please stop hanging around with him? How dare you? Aji, he is a prince, you know. Father's words carried a hint of guilt. I kicked the door open and saw Xiao Bujue leaning against the window. It had been a long time. He seemed to have lost some weight. Swallowing the words I was about to say, I shoved a package of pastries into his hands. Does the second young miss pity me? Even the pastries from Yuashan Tower can't shut you up. I queued for hours just to get one pack, and he has the nerve to act smug after getting a free ride. I have to attend a poetry gathering tonight. To my surprise, the theme was the same as my first poetry gathering, the Flying Flowers verse game. This time, I unapologetically claimed the championship for myself. Oh dear, my apologies, second young miss. The page boy accidentally spilled ink on me. Frowning, I scolded him. How could you be so careless? Watch where you're going. Seeing my anger, the page boy hastily spoke up. Please, second young miss, if you would proceed to the guest chamber, this servant will send someone to fetch a change of clothes at once. I followed him into the room. A cup of hot tea sat on the table, steam rising gently from it. The room was eerily quiet, the window was open, letting in a chill from outside. I cupped the mug and took a few sips. The next second, I crashed to the floor with a thud, blacking out. Tisk, go call for help, now. At the sound of the ninth prince's voice, I shuddered for a moment, sleeping so soundly. Well, blame your father for this. His hand groped my waist. A wave of nausea churned within me as the cruel persecution from my past life came flooding back. I couldn't keep up the act any longer and opened my eyes. The ninth prince was taken aback for a moment, but quickly regained his composure and resumed his sinister grin. It's even better that you're awake, my little beauty. Go ahead and scream. The louder you are, the more it pleases this prince. His voice coiled around me like a venomous serpent. With every ounce of strength I had, I kicked him. I swiftly rolled off the bed and clamped down hard on his wrist. The ninth prince grimaced in pain, and without a moment's hesitation, I snatched his discarded outer robe and stuffed it into his mouth. Then, I pulled the rope hidden at my waist and deftly bound him. I leisurely pulled over a stool and sat down in front of him. You seem to have forgotten one thing. I didn't just study the classics, I trained in martial arts as well. In my past life, I was constantly restrained, mindful of the delicate balance between the general's estate and the prince's manor. Now, with my vengeance fulfilled, I looked at that face, bruised and battered from the fall, and smiled with profound satisfaction. By the time father and Xiao Bujue burst into the room, all they saw was me with my head bowed, drowsy and on the verge of sleep. At my feet lay the prince, beaten unconscious. Father found letters on the ninth prince, supposedly from the emperor. Of course, they were forgeries, but father's rebellion with the seventh prince, that was all too real. My sister was rescued, she had lost her mind. As she passed by, she grabbed me and demanded, "You knew all along, didn't you? You knew he was a monster." I shook off her hand, seeing no trace of warmth left in her eyes. "You chose this path, Jiang Yu." I refused to call her sister anymore. She first broke into wild laughter, then wept as if her heart would break. Our parents, heartsick with grief, kept her confined to her old courtyard. The new emperor had ascended the throne, yet he made no move. I began to suspect he had forgotten his promise to me. I was summoned to the imperial palace. He stood in the royal study, his tall, imposing figure accentuated by the broad, dragon-embroidered robe. "Well," asked Xiao Bujue. I was at a loss. He asked again, "How about being a match for you, the second miss?" I thought he must have addled his brains with all that book learning. I turned and walked away. Suddenly, someone grabbed me from behind. A voice, gritted with threat, whispered in my ear, "If you don't agree to be empress, I'll hold you to our promise." I kicked backward, catching him off guard. He stumbled and fell to the ground, yet a smile played on his lips. "Xiao Bujue, you're absolutely insane." The imperial court issued a new decree, allowing women to take the imperial examinations just like men. Later, a system for female officials also emerged out of nowhere. More and more young women from secluded households began poring over books, and many composed poetry, passing the exams in one go.